Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for $50 million, and they laughed them out of the room. That is not even the wildest story on this list, because if you were a kid in the 80s or 90s, your whole weekend happened inside stores that do not exist anymore. The video store, the giant toy store, the mall. You begged your parents to take you, and then one by one, they all just vanished. Today we are walking through 15 of them, and the real reason each one died. Keep count of how many you shopped at. Number 12 fired its best employees on purpose. Friday night was a place, and the place was Blockbuster. The wall of new releases, the popcorn smell, the little plastic ticket stub. Here is the part that still hurts. In the year 2000, Blockbuster was offered the chance to buy a tiny company called Netflix for $50 million, and the executives reportedly laughed. That same year, they collected around $800 million in late fees, 16% of their revenue. They were addicted to the thing customers hated most. By 2011, they sold for scraps. One single Blockbuster is still open in Bend, Oregon. A warehouse the size of a stadium, filled with nothing but toys, and you were let loose in it. Everyone says Amazon killed Toys R Us. That is not what happened. In 2005, a group of investors bought it in a $7.5 billion leveraged buyout and loaded all that debt onto the store itself. Toys R Us was paying around $500 million a year just in interest. The store was still profitable. It just could not breathe under the debt. In 2018, every U.S. location closed. Not everyone had a Toys R Us nearby, but almost every mall had a KB Toys, crammed into a tiny space with toys stacked to the ceiling and a bin of clearance stuff by the door. At its peak in the late 90s, it had over 1,300 stores. Then the malls started dying, and the debt piled up. And on February 9th, 2009, the last KB Toys closed. Months later, its old rival Toys R Us bought the name, which is a little like your enemy buying your gravestone. Before every TV came from a website, you drove to Circuit City to stand in a wall of glowing screens. And here is store number 4 doing something almost unbelievable. In 2007, to save money, Circuit City fired 3,400 of its most experienced, highest-paid salespeople on purpose and replaced them with cheaper new hires. Customer service collapsed overnight. Within 2 years, the company was completely gone. They fired the exact people who knew how to sell the thing they sold. If you needed a weird cable, a battery, a remote control car, or a police scanner, you went to Radio Shack. And they had one deeply annoying habit. You could not buy anything, even a single pack of batteries, without the person behind the counter asking for your full name and address. Later, they switched to just your zip code. They were quietly building a map of their customers to decide where to put new stores. Every 90s kid remembers the pause at the register while your dad sighed and gave up his address. This one sounds made up to anyone under 30. You walked into service merchandise, saw one display model of the thing you wanted, wrote its number down on a little paper slip, handed it in, and then waited by a counter for your item to ride out to you on a conveyor belt from a warehouse hidden behind the wall. That was normal. Nobody thought it was strange. They peaked in the 80s with around 400 stores and were completely gone by 2002. Before playlists, music was a building you walked into. Tower Records was a cathedral of it, aisles and aisles of CDs and cassettes, staff who judged your taste and were usually right. At its peak, it had around 200 stores across 30 countries. Then downloads arrived, and by 2006, it was bankrupt. Tom Hanks's son loved it so much, he made an entire documentary about its death. That is the kind of loyalty a store used to earn. If the mall was your world, Sam Goody was your record store, the place you spent your entire allowance on one single CD, then read the liner notes in the car like they were scripture. It was the soundtrack aisle of a whole generation. But a mall music store selling $20 CDs could not survive the exact moment music became free and digital. The listening stations went quiet, and the stores slipped away one by one. Right near Sam Goody, glowing like a movie premiere, was Suncoast Motion Picture Company. Not just movies to buy, but posters, shirts, and film stuff you did not even know you needed until you saw it. It was where you felt like a real film fan at 13, and it lived and died on one fragile thing: people buying physical movies. When that habit ended, so did the store. Every mall had a bookstore tucked between the shoe store and the pretzel stand, a Waldenbooks or a B. Dalton. small and warm and quiet in the middle of all that noise. It is where you got your first Goosebumps book and stood reading things your parents would not buy you. Both chains got swallowed up and shut down as the big superstores, and then the internet took over. The little mall bookstore just quietly closed its doors. This one was not a store you bought from, it was a store you were released into. Discovery Zone, tubes, ball pits, that specific smell, and a level of chaos no adult could supervise. It started in 1990 and exploded to around 350 locations almost overnight. And that was the problem. It grew way too fast, drowned in debt, and filed for bankruptcy in 1996, owing hundreds of millions. The ball pits went dark almost as quickly as they appeared. Here is number 12. And if you had one of these instead of a Blockbuster, this was a whole identity. Hollywood Video was the great rival, and picking a side actually meant something. But its parent company took on $850 million in debt buying up the competition, and it never recovered. In the summer of 2010, the last Hollywood Video closed. Both kings of Friday night were gone within a few years of each other. Older than all of these, but you still remember it. Woolworths, the original 5 and dime, where everything once cost a nickel or a dime, and the lunch counter served you a grilled cheese at the counter. Here is the twist nobody believes. Woolworths did not just disappear. The company survived by quietly turning itself into a shoe brand you absolutely know, Foot Locker. The 5 and dime is still out there. It just sells sneakers now. And the strangest one of all, for most of the 20th century, the Sears catalog could sell you anything. And I mean anything. Because for decades, you could order an entire house from it. A full home, around 30,000 pre-cut pieces, shipped to you by railroad in a 25-ton kit for you to build. Sears sold around 75,000 of them, and thousands are still standing and lived in today. The company that could once mail you a house could not survive the internet. And the last one is not a store. It is the place that held all of them. The mall, the fountain you threw pennies in, the food court, the arcade, the movie theater, the specific freedom of being dropped off with $10 in a meeting time. For a 90s kid, the mall was not shopping, it was the entire social world. And that world did not close in a bankruptcy filing. It just slowly got quieter, one shuttered store at a time, until the lights in the fountain went off for good. 15 places, some killed by debt, one killed by laughing at Netflix, one that turned into a sneaker company, and one that could mail you a house. They are gone, but you were there, and that is the whole point of this channel. People refusing to forget. So tell me, and I read every single one, which store do you miss the most, and which one did I leave out? Somebody reading this had their birthday at a Discovery Zone. If this walked you back through the mall for a few minutes, subscribe. There is a new one every week.